Alright guys, so here's your lesson on 5.3, dividing polynomials, day 1, just in case you need to go through it again, because I understand the material is difficult. So for the first example, you're taking a polynomial, so a polynomial over here, and dividing it by a monomial. Again, a monomial is just one term. So what's happening is you're taking both of these terms and dividing it by 3a. The best way to do this, I believe, is to rewrite it. So this is the same thing as 18a cubed over 3a plus 30a squared over 3a. It's good to do this, that way you know that you're taking both of these and dividing them by 3a, and then from there you just have to simplify. So 18 over 3 reduces to 6, a cubed over a reduces to a squared, 30 over 3 reduces to 10, a squared over a reduces to a. So your final answer for this is going to be 6a squared plus 10a. For the second one, you're taking this and multiplying it by this monomial being raised to the -1 power. Now, negative exponents you always have to move, so what's going to happen is you're taking this and essentially moving it to the bottom of this fraction. So you have these three terms all over 3p squared tr. So again, we're dividing. So this -1 as the exponent is just a fancy way of saying take this polynomial and divide it by this monomial. Once again, I'm going to go ahead and rewrite it. So I think it's helpful to see all of them on top of each other. So there's my first term. Second term, minus 21p squared qtr squared over 3p squared tr minus 9p cubed tr over 3p squared tr. And then just go ahead and simplify each one. So 12 over 3 reduces to 4. Two of these p's are going to cancel, so you're just left with 4p. T is going to cancel, so you're left with 4t, and then your r's cancel. For this one, -21 over 3 becomes -7. Your p squares cancel. You don't have a q, so it's going to be 7q. T's cancel, and then you cancel one of those r's over here. Minus 9 over 3 reduces to 3. P cubed over p squared reduces to p, and both of your tr's are going to cancel. So your answer for this one is going to be 4pt minus 7qr minus 3p. Now starts the fun problems. So long division is very similar to doing regular division with numbers, except in this case you're dealing with polynomials. So whatever we're dividing by goes on the outside. What we're dividing into goes on the inside of your division bar. So I have 3x cubed minus 8x squared minus 11x plus 30. Now before you actually take this polynomial and write it underneath here, you do need to make sure you have all the terms. Here's what I mean by having all the terms. If we have an x cubed, you need to have an x squared, an x, and a number. So let's say, for instance, this 11x was not there. Okay, if this 11x was not there and you only had x cubed minus 8x squared plus 30, you would have to input a 0 as a placeholder. Okay, so once again, you need to make sure you have all your terms: x cubed, x squared, x, and a number. And I think a further example, you're going to have to input a 0, so we'll talk more about that later. For long division, you're always focusing on that first term, so I like to underline it. You're thinking, what times x gives you this first term? So what times x gives you 3x cubed? That's going to be 3x squared, because x times 3x squared gives you 3x cubed. Now what you're going to do next is you're going to take with the term that you have written on top over here and multiply both of these terms by that monomial, which I'm going to do over here. So I have 3x squared times x minus 2. That gives me 3x cubed minus 6x squared. This I'm going to rewrite underneath here. And if you notice when I wrote the 3x squared, I wrote it on top of my x squared term. That's because I like to keep it organized, and that way I know that I'm going to have two other terms that I'm going to write over here. Your next step is going to be to draw the line and change your signs. In long division, you're always subtracting. So to subtract, it's the same thing as changing your signs. And what's going to happen is these first two terms are going to cancel, which is exactly what we want. So then you're left with 0 over here. Negative 8x squared plus 6x squared is negative 2x squared. And just like in regular long division, you're going to bring down the next term. And the process repeats itself. So you're looking at what times x gives you negative 2x squared. That's going to be negative 2x. Because x times negative 2x gives you negative 2x squared. You don't have to pay attention to this. You're only comparing the first terms. So I'm going to take what I wrote over here and multiply it by what we're dividing by. So I have negative 2x squared plus 4x, just distributing. I'm going to take this and write it underneath here. From there, you're going to draw your line and change your signs. Add straight down. So negative 2x squared plus 2x squared is 0. These cancel, which is exactly what we want. Negative 11x minus 4x is going to be negative 15x. And then we're going to bring down the next term. And again, the process repeats itself. So you're thinking what times x gives you negative 15x. That's going to be negative 15. So whatever I write over here, I'm going to take and multiply that by what we're dividing by. Distribute, you get negative 15x plus 30. I'm going to take this and write it right underneath here. Next step, draw your line, change your signs, and in this case, when you combine everything, you do not have a remainder. So if you recall from long division, sometimes you would have to put the r and a number when you do long division with numbers. In this case, there is no remainder, so we don't have to worry about that. We're not going to deal with the r with the remainder. We're going to do it a little bit differently when there is a remainder, but we'll talk about that with a new example. This up here is your final answer. So your final answer is going to be 3x squared minus 2x minus 15. All right, let's do another one. So what I'm dividing by is going to go on the outside. And what I'm dividing into is going to go on the inside. So I have a negative 3x to the fourth minus 5x cubed. And if you notice, I'm going from an x cubed to an x. So the term that I'm missing is the x squared. So I'm going to input a 0 as a placeholder. So it's going to be plus 0x squared minus 35x plus 7. It's important that you put the zeros there as a placeholder because otherwise you're going to get stuck and your terms aren't going to match up. Same process as before. So you're looking at your first term, thinking what times x gives you negative 3x to the fourth. That's going to be negative 3x cubed because negative 3x cubed times x is negative 3x to the fourth. What you write up here, you're going to multiply by what you're dividing by. Now the steps that I'm doing along the side over here are completely optional. You don't have to do it, but it's helpful for those of you that have a tendency to make little mistakes. So that gives me negative 3x to the fourth minus 9x cubed. I'm going to take both of these and write them right underneath here. So if you notice, these two match, which is exactly what we want. Next step, draw your line, change your signs. I'm going to make that green so it matches the last example. And then combine. So these cancel. Negative 5x cubed plus 9x cubed is going to be 4x cubed. And then bring down your next term. Now, if you didn't have the 0x squared here, you would end up bringing down the negative 35x, and what's going to happen is you're going to have an x cubed over here and an x squared over here, and it's not going to be able to combine. So it's important that you have the 0 there. So continuing with the process, what times x gives you 4x cubed? That is 4x squared. So I'm taking my 4x squared, multiplying it by x plus 3. That gives me 4x cubed plus 12x squared, which I'm going to write over here. Next step, draw your line, change your signs. Combine, these cancel, which is what we want. That's going to give you negative 12x squared, and bring down your next term. Again, what times x gives you negative 12x squared? That is negative 12x. So I'm going to take my negative 12x and multiply it by x plus 3. That gives me negative 12x squared minus 36x, which I'm going to go ahead and write over here. Draw my line, change my signs, and that gives me 1x. Oh, I want to make that blue. Gotta stay consistent. And then bring down the 7. And now what times x gives you x? That one should be easy. That's just 1. So I have 1 times x plus 3, which gives me x plus 3. Draw my line, change my signs, and this time I have a remainder. Okay, so it didn't work out nicely where you had a 0. If you have a remainder, what you're going to do is you are going to tack it at the end of your answer over here. Except you're not just going to put plus 4, because that wouldn't make any sense. You're going to put plus 4 over what you divided by, which in this case we divided by x plus 3. So our final answer, which I'm going to put over here, is negative 3x cubed plus 4x squared minus 12x plus 1 plus 4 over x plus 3. So that's not so bad, is it? I love long division. I think it's a lot of fun. It's like a puzzle. It's very procedural. It does get long, that's why it's called long division. Just kind of work through it step by step, and then you should be able to get your final answer up here. All right, one more. Okay, again, this negative 1 is just a fancy way of saying divide. So I'm dividing by 3x minus 2, and I am dividing into 6x cubed plus 11x squared minus 19x plus 6. This one was nice because we didn't have any missing terms, so I didn't have to put in a 0. Now this one's a little tricky just because our first term is a 3x instead of just being an x like it was for the last couple of examples. But process is still the same. What times 3x gives you 6x cubed? Well, 2 times 3 gives you 6. And then x times x squared is going to give you the x cubed. So 3x times 2x squared gives you 6x cubed. I'm going to take my 2x squared and multiply it by 3x minus 2. That gives me 6x cubed minus 4x squared. I'm going to draw my line, change my signs, and then I get 15x squared. Bring down my next term and repeat the process. What times 3x gives you 15x squared? And that's going to be 5x. Because 5x times 3x is 15x squared. Multiplying along the side. So that gives me 15x squared minus 10x. So I'm going to put over here. Going to draw my line, change my signs. Combine, and that gives me negative 9x plus 6. And then finally, what times 3x gives me negative 9x? That's going to be negative 3. Distribute, so that gives me negative 9x plus 6. Draw my line, change my signs, and in this case, we don't have a remainder. So that worked out nicely. Final answer, 2x squared plus 5x minus 3. Final answer is always on top over there. And there you have it. There's long division. Hopefully the video helps you, and if you got stuck somewhere, you can always watch the video as many times as you need to get the material figured out. All right, see you in class.